Devotional, Tuesday, 12th of May. When he was 8 years old, Ron threw a hammer at someone's head and ended up in juvenile court. That was the first of many brushes with the law. Later he dropped out of school, got mixed up with drugs, and rose to second in command of a vicious street gang that terrorized parts of Chicago in the 1960s and 70s. He got into really bad trouble when he was 21. A rival gang brutally assaulted one of Ron's friends, and he vowed to take revenge. He borrowed a gun and went hunting for Bob, who had led the attack. It didn't take long to track down the enemy. Although Bob was not among them, his brother Gary was, and Ron decided that he would murder Gary, and then when Bob showed up at his brother's funeral, Ron would ambush him too. That way, two of the rival gang would be dead. However, the gun jammed, but on the second attempt he managed to shoot and injure Gary. By this time a siren was wailing in the distance, and Ron promptly ran and managed to escape the police. An arrest warrant was issued, and he was charged with attempted murder. With Ron's criminal record, a conviction would have meant at least 20 years in prison, so he fled with his girlfriend to Canada, where he got his first job. In that job, some of his co-workers were Christians, and through their influence, Ron finally received Jesus as the forgiver of his sins and leader of his life. His life was transformed. His girlfriend became a Christian too. They were soon married, had a child, and put their roots down in a local church. But something kept gnawing at him. Even though he'd been reconciled with God, he hadn't been reconciled with society. There was still a warrant out for his arrest, and he felt the only honest thing to do would be to give himself up and face the possibility of imprisonment away from his family. And so he handed himself in to the authorities and subsequently appeared in the criminal court. And in that courtroom he simply looked into the judge's eyes and said, "I'm guilty. I did it, and I'm responsible. If I need to go to prison, that's okay with me. But I've become a Christian, and the right thing to do is to admit what I've done and to ask for forgiveness. What I did was wrong, plain and simple, and I'm sorry, I really am." In response, the judge said that he was so impressed by the way that God had changed Ron's life, he didn't think it was necessary to send him to prison. Instead, he concluded that Ron was no longer a danger to society and gave him probation. "Go home, be with your family," he said. When confronted by a reporter about what had happened, Ron simply replied, "What that judge did was show me grace, sort of like Jesus did. And if you let him, God will show you grace too." The reporter that day was none other than Lee Strobel. Although an atheist, Lee's encounter with Ron that day gave him a glimpse of what Jesus is like and how he can transform anyone's life. Soon afterwards, Lee committed his life to Jesus, and many of us have benefited from his books in the years since.